This is tough. I've been sitting here in front of this microphone trying to figure out how did I want to start this? What do I want to say? I've been thinking for a number of days now, what do I want to say? Because I come to the conclusion, some people want me to say something. I don't have no huge audience, that's for sure, but some people want to know what I think. But to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't know if I wanted to do podcasting anymore. I'm not kidding you. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm not trying to be, I don't know. I honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to do podcasting anymore. Why? Because it's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating to sit back and look and watch and see what's going on in this country. Do a podcast where you think with the slimmest of chance, maybe you can help and it not do anything. It have absolutely no effect. I did the episode. I did this episode already, Comparison Group. I did it 3 months ago. 3 months ago. I've done the episode after a political shooting. In that episode, I mentioned Charlie Kirk by name. I mentioned him by name 3 months ago. The episode was entitled The Threat to Our Democracy. I put it out on June 19th, 5 days after Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot and killed in their home. 5 days after, I did this episode already. The Threat to Our Democracy. And this is why I didn't want to do this, because there might be people who will hear this, my podcast, for the very first time and go, oh, who's this guy think he is? And there are other people who've been listening maybe more recently who might say, oh, what's he trying to say? And then there are other people who've been listening for a long time and will say, yep, he's been saying this over and over and over again. There seem to continue to be things that I keep saying that at some point in the future, all of a sudden, oh yeah, right, okay, yes, we have a problem with political violence in this country. No joke. No joke. We have a problem with political violence in this country. No joke. Political violence has no place in this country. No joke. No kidding. We have to talk to one another. We have to listen to one another. No joke. No kidding. Who doesn't know that? What do you want us to say to one another? How about that? What do you want us to say to one another? I've done the episodes. I've told people. I've tried to explain to people. I just did it with my dad. I just had a discussion with my dad just the last episode. It's about how you talk to people. Everybody knows we have a problem right now with violence in the country. That's not a shock. Our minds move on and we tend to forget things. But we know we have a problem right now with violence, with political violence. And if anybody has any sense and they're honest at all, they know it's not one side. It's not one side or the other. There's a problem with the rhetoric coming from both sides. And just because one side's list is longer, you can create a list and say this person was a Trump supporter and this person was a Trump supporter and this person was a Trump supporter. And because the list is longer, I'm supposed to feel better about my side because the list is shorter. A couple of assassinations against Trump, Luigi Mangione shooting a shooting a healthcare executive. I'm supposed to feel better because the violence is shorter on the other side. The actual killings, the actual murders are longer on this side than the attempted murders on this side. Really? Is that what we're going to argue about now? To say one side is worse than the other, or it's one side's fault versus the other side's fault? Is that really what we're going to argue about now? Is that what I'm supposed to come here and sit down and do a podcast about? Because that's the only way to get listeners? Because that's the only way to get people to listen to you? If you say, don't worry, it's not your side's fault. Oh, no. It's the other side. It's the other side. And look, don't ask me why president can't get right. I don't know. I swear I don't. I don't know. It's not just that President Donald Trump can't just come out and sit down in front of a microphone and say the right thing. He says the opposite of the right thing. The opposite. I could play you the speech that Barack Obama gave in Arizona after Gabby Giffords was shot. One of the lines of the speech he had was, "What we can't do is use this as another opportunity to turn on one another." That's what Barack Obama said after a tragic shooting. After 9/11, George Bush went out, plain and simple, and told people, our war is not with the Muslim faith. Do not go out and take your frustration and anger out on Muslims. Our war is not with the Muslim people. Somehow, people know what to say. But President can't get right. I could try and play devil's advocate and give it up and say, give him the benefit of the doubt and say he was emotional and he was upset and he said the wrong thing. But he does it all the time. He does it all the time. I can't ignore that. I have to point that out. But comparison group, people, America, I also have to point out that some of what has come from people on the opposite side of Donald Trump has not been helpful. It just hasn't. How low are we going to make the bar? How low? If you tell me, hey, so-and-so did the right thing. They said Charlie Kirk didn't deserve to die. He was a horrible guy, but he didn't deserve to die. That's what passes for compassion and empathy in the country now? That's what passes for saying the right thing now? How low are we going to make the bar when something like this happens? How long are we going to keep running back to the sources of information that we give 5-star ratings because they make us feel good about ourselves? They don't make us feel bad about ourselves. I got news for you. We should all feel bad about ourselves right now. Regardless of how you felt about Charlie Kirk, we should all feel bad about ourselves because we should all care about this country. And we should all accept that we can do better. We shouldn't be blaming algorithms. We shouldn't be blaming tech companies. We shouldn't be blaming social media. We should be blaming ourselves. Ourselves. I'm sick and tired of people telling me the problem is social media. I'm sick and tired of hearing myself say the problem is social media. Because I've said that. The problem is social media. Yeah, that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. But the problem is us. I did this show already. I said it 3 months ago. The problem is us. I said it to my dad 2 weeks ago. I said, Dad, Donald Trump cannot destroy this democracy. We can. We will. The people. When we stop talking to one another, when we stop listening to one another, when we stop caring about one another, that's what's going to destroy this democracy. You can call Donald Trump the spark. You can call him the spark, but we're the inferno. We're the raging inferno right now in this country. Oh, I'll say it now. Let me break up this. I'm getting emotional. Let me break this up with what I came up with. Because, once again, I'm hearing a lot of ranting. I'm hearing a whole lot of ranting. But I'm not hearing any suggestions, any idea solutions. This is a suggestion, idea, solution podcast. What do we do? Like I said, it's not enough to tell us we got to talk to one another. What do we say to one another? What do we say to one another? I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they referenced somebody on Twitter saying, why are we still trying to persuade these people? In other words, MAGA people. This person was saying, why are we still trying to persuade them? We just need a mass deprogramming. That's what this person said. I have no idea who the person was. They just referenced it. And I had to chuckle to myself and, number one, say, persuade? Is that what you've been calling it? Is that what you've been calling your interactions with people you disagree with, trying to persuade them? I don't think saying, hey, stupid, come here, let me talk to you and tell you how you're wrong about everything. I don't think that's how you go about persuading people, but that's what we do. That's what we do. And then people on the other side go, hey, libtard. Hey, come here, libtard. You're stupid libtard. Why are you such a libtard? That's what we do. Is that what we're calling persuading? Is that how we're supposed to talk to one another when we start talking to one another? Obviously not. So I said, hey, let me come up with a slogan. People seem to like slogans. And yeah, it's stupid and it's corny, but what do I know? Maybe people would like a stupid and corny slogan. So the slogan I came up with as a suggestion in this, to help us in this time, we need to put a lid on the cap. You get it? We need to put a lid on the cap. What's the cap? Condescending, arrogant, and patronizing. We need to put a lid on that crap. We need to put a lid on being condescending, arrogant, and patronizing. Now, there are people out there who say, you're doggone rootin' tootin' we do. You're doggone right, comparison guy. We got to put a lid on that. Being condescending, being arrogant, and being patronizing. There are people out there who may be listening who are going, I'm not condescending, I'm not arrogant, and I'm not patronizing. If you've ever been on social media and you said that, you are the problem. You are the problem. I don't care who you are. I guarantee you, if you've been on social media discussing politics with people you don't agree with, I want to curse. I guarantee you have been condescending, arrogant, or patronizing. Accept it or don't. But that is the problem. People do not realize when they're being condescending, arrogant, and patronizing. They think they're debating. They think they're arguing. It's a flaw we all have when we get into a heated exchange, especially when the argument's not going the way we want. And so I can just picture it from the little bit of information that I've heard so far about the shooter, the killer of Charlie Kirk. I can just picture it. I played online games with friends of mine going back 10, 15 years ago. It's probably been since I've done it. We would be a group of maybe, 5 or 6 people online in a game with the headsets on, and you have a microphone and you're talking. You're all in this group playing a game together and you're talking to one another. And it gets heated. Oh, does it get heated? Oh, do the arguments ensue? And it gets personal sometimes. And people get really, really, really angry. If you're playing versus someone and you lose, forget it. Forget about it. It gets truly angry. So now I can imagine, change that from arguing about a game and arguing about politics and times that by 1,000,000. I can only imagine what these people say to one another in regards to politics in the course of online interactions. I can only imagine. Just knowing what I know about what a group of friends, what that used to descend into, the kind of fighting that used to descend into, I can just imagine what strangers say to one another in this particular time in our country online. So that makes me say, I have no idea whether or not this person particularly hated Charlie Kirk. We're all assuming, we're all making that assumption that this person just hated Charlie Kirk, heard what Charlie Kirk had to say, didn't like what Charlie Kirk had to say, hated Charlie Kirk, was going to take Charlie Kirk out. I don't know. I don't know if this person felt like the attack was against the supporters of Charlie Kirk that he argued with online, which is why I've said in the past, you got to be real careful what you're saying to people online because you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. So we'll find out. We'll find out if that has any validity, what I just said, that this attack was more against the supporters of Charlie Kirk that this particular individual hated and argued with on a daily basis online more so than it was an attack on Charlie Kirk, the individual. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I'm speculating. I'm going to try and keep this short. As I said, I don't want to have the conversation that I've heard people having over these past few days. I just don't. I swear I feel like it's a waste of time. Your time is valuable. I want to do a podcast where people say there's intelligent discussion going on there. There's intelligent discussion. He talks to you, you can comment to him, and he's fair and he's consistent in what he's saying, and you never know exactly where he's going to come down on a particular issue. That's the kind of podcast I want to do. I don't want to do a podcast where you tune in knowing exactly what the person's going to say. The podcast I tuned into that I listened to after the shooting, I knew exactly what they were going to say before they said it. There was no surprise whatsoever. None whatsoever. I listened to a far right podcast, I listened to a far left podcast, and I listened to a down the middle podcast. And they all they stayed exactly true to form to what they were. The far right one stayed far right, the far left stayed far left, and the middle one stayed down the middle. Sure enough. I mean, they all were exactly what I expected them to be. And none of them had any ideas what to do. None of them offered a single idea what to do. Not one. Other than we got to talk to one another and we should put down the phones and, there's no place for political violence in the country. Other than that, they didn't have anything to offer. So what do I have to offer? What's different here? I think maybe the first thing we have to consider, I have never listened to Joe Rogan's podcast. Just no reason for it. I just have never listened to Joe Rogan's podcast. I have never listened to Call Her Daddy podcast. Before Kamala Harris was a presidential candidate and went on that podcast, I never heard of that podcast before. Never. Call Her Daddy podcast. I've never listened, other than the one episode where I pulled clips for Bernie Sanders, to Theo Von's podcast. Never listened to it. I said I was going to listen to his podcast more after I listened to his interview with Bernie Sanders. I've never listened to another episode of Theo Von's podcast. These are three of the biggest people in podcasting right now. Joe Rogan, the Call Her Daddy, which I don't even know her name, and Theo Von. And there's probably a dozen more that I could name that you wouldn't know who they are. It's like Dancing with the Stars. Where are the stars? Who the heck are the stars? You don't know them, but people do. A lot of people do. Millions of people do. So let's just think about that. If you heard the news of the Charlie Kirk shooting and you went, who the heck is Charlie Kirk? And yet he influences millions of people in this country. Donald Trump said he was vital in getting him reelected. This guy has been around for 10 years, I believe. Forgive me if I'm getting that number wrong. I think that's what people have been saying. I've heard the conservative podcaster who knew him said he met Charlie Kirk when he was 18 years old. Charlie Kirk was 18 years old starting Turning Points USA. So maybe he's been around for even longer than 10 years. And millions of people have no idea who he was. No clue. Absolutely no clue who he was. Same thing with a lot of those other people I just named. Theo Von, the Call Her Daddy podcast, Dan Bongino, who I've talked about a ton on this podcast, who's now the deputy director of the FBI. People, no clue. No clue who they are. And yet they influence millions. We probably should start there. And once again, I hate to keep repeating this. This is what I said in the episode. The threat to our democracy is that we have no idea what one another is listening to or being influenced by. How can you talk to me if you have no idea what's influencing me? It's happened to me many times on social media. On Twitter, I'll tweet something and people will come back at me like they know exactly who I am from A to Z. They know everything about me. They have figured me out from 140 characters on a social media app. They know what I'm all about. It happened to me. I tweeted something. I've talked about this before. I tweeted something about unions. Just an innocuous reply to someone about the Starbucks union. I tweeted something. And I have 15 people coming at me. Like, once again, like I said, I was a cattle baron that was looking to steal somebody's land from out from under them. I was suddenly a corporatist. I was suddenly some kind of evil capitalist devil because of this thing that I tweeted about unions they didn't like. And I said, whoa, slow down here, guys. Slow down here. What did I do? And then when I kind of made it obvious that I was not what they thought I was, guess what happened? Out of the 15 people that came after me, 10 of them went away. They were attacking. And then I said, whoa, hang on a second here. Let me explain to you who I am and what I'm about and why I'm saying what I'm saying. 10 of them went away. They didn't want to continue the conversation. Oh, this is no fun. No fun to attack a guy who's on our side, kinda. No fun. Out of the 5 that stayed, 3, we had a decent back and forth. fairly decent, and 2 kept attacking. Even after I said, look, I'm not against you. I'm not your enemy. I have a different view than you have about unions overall, but I'm not your enemy. Even after making that clear, 2 people kept attacking me as if I was anti-union because I wasn't as pro-union as they needed me to be. So how do I don't understand, comparison guy. How can you be pro-union, but at the same time be anti-union? I don't understand. Well, yeah, see, that's why you got to listen. That's why you got to listen to people. And that's what I said in that interaction. I said, look, I just did a show. I do a podcast. I just did a podcast where I just talked about this. And then after that interaction that I had on Twitter, I did another episode, and I called it A Discussion Broke Out on Twitter, because discussions never break out on Twitter. But I did have a decent back and forth discussion, as I said, with like 3 people. And so I talked about it. In the next episode I did, I titled it A Discussion Broke Out on Twitter, and then I tagged the individuals that I had the conversation with on Twitter. And I said, hey, check this out. I obviously didn't out you. I didn't give your Twitter handle or anything, but you might find this interesting. Tell me what you think. Think I heard anything back from anybody? Nope. Nobody responded. I listened and I agree, or I listened and I disagree. I got nothing. No response. People want to turn the show off because sometimes they'll tune in and it'll sound like I'm defending Trump. They go, well, how can this guy be not a Trump supporter if he's defending Trump? Very easy, because I take Trump out of the equation. And I try to remain consistent and fair and honest. And I could sit here and I could say to you, I would not go along with the people who, when Joe Biden walked into office, they all said, okay, COVID's your problem now, Joe. These deaths are on your hands now, Joe Biden. COVID is all your fault. That's what people said. Go back, look it up if you don't believe me. That's what people said on the right. When Joe Biden took office, they said, COVID's all your fault. It's your problem. If anything's not working right, it's your fault. Fox News immediately jumped down Joe Biden's throat on how quickly the vaccine was coming. Joe Biden had nothing to do with developing that vaccine. Absolutely nothing to do. And he had to come in and he had to quickly put a plan together to get the vaccine distributed to the rest of the country. And Fox News immediately started criticizing. And I said, well, that's not fair. It's not fair. You can't criticize Joe Biden for COVID and what's going on related to COVID. It's the last administration. So how can I sit here and be consistent and not tell you, you can't criticize Donald Trump completely for what's going on with this economy? Particularly when we just see the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, revise down significantly job numbers from the Biden administration. I didn't need them to do that for me to tell you that you can't blame Trump for an economy that's not as strong as people were claiming it was. I've been saying it. I've been saying it for months, that Donald Trump is not walking into the strongest booming economy in the world. Is Trump handling things well? Well, not in my opinion, not right now. Is he perhaps making things worse? Possibly. We have to see. We have to see the continued result. We can't judge it right now in this moment, in this second. But yeah, I don't think he's doing things the way things should be done. But I certainly cannot say inflation, all his fault. Job losses, all his fault. All Trump's tariffs. Well, no, they're not, because it started before Trump's tariffs. It started way before Donald Trump's tariffs, as we all now know. The inflation was way before Donald Trump's tariffs. The job losses we now know way before Trump's tariffs. Now, here's the key that we have to understand. You can't get upset with me for what I just said. You can't get upset and say, oh, I don't like that. That's centrist. I don't like that you're being too moderate. I don't like it. You're being too down the middle. I don't agree with you. It's all Trump's fault. Trump screwed this economy up. Trump crashed the world economy. I don't like it. Did you like what I said about Biden with the COVID? You can't blame him. Would you like it if I said you can't blame Barack Obama, as they did also when he walked in, was handed a disaster of economy? They blamed Obama. They said, this is Obama's fault. Obama's fault, this economy. I said, well, no, you got to give him a year. It's still Bush's fault. Give him a year. Said the same thing with Trump. You can't take credit. You can't take credit, Donald Trump. Barack Obama handed you an economy that was creating jobs. Give him a year before you can start claiming one way or the other, bad or good. The economy is yours. Same thing with Joe Biden. I said, you can't blame this guy, and nor can you take credit, Joe Biden, for coming in for jobs that were restored jobs, not created jobs. This is a discussion. This is what people have to listen to. This is what we can't argue because it's common sense and consistency. Don't tell us to go talk to one another and not tell us how we should be talking to one another. This is how we should be talking to one another. This should not be controversial. This should not upset anybody. This shouldn't anger anybody. And guess what? If you want to go after you listen and give me a 3-star rating, I will say thank you. Thank you. I don't need a 5-star rating. If I'm doing political discussion, I should not get a 5-star rating. If I get a 5-star rating, what does that mean? I'm preaching to the choir. If everybody agrees, I'm preaching to the choir. I don't want to preach to the choir. I want to preach to the congregation. Everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome to listen. As long as your view is not filled with hate or violence, come on in. You're welcome. Don't agree? Perfect. You shouldn't agree with everything I say. I don't know everything. I'm going to be wrong sometimes. But you can't disagree with everything I say. I ain't going to be wrong all the time. And history proves that. History shows that. I ain't going to be wrong all the time. Listen. I just don't want to feel like this every time I sit down to do a podcast episode. This ain't the type of podcast I thought I'd be doing. One where I see a horrific, tragic shooting of politicians and say to myself, okay, what do I say? What do I say about this? And the only thing I could come up with is it was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time before something like this happened. And to really send you into a spiral of depression, it's going to happen again. No doubt, no question, it's going to happen again. I don't know if it will be a Democratic politician or a Republican politician. I don't know if it will be someone in the media, on the left or on the right. I don't know if it will be some outspoken person from entertainment, an actor or singer. I don't know if it will be at their home or coming out of a restaurant or walking a dog. I just know an attempt on someone's life will be made, and perhaps they'll be killed because of politics. Because of politics. You know it too. That's what I said. That was at the very beginning of the show. I did right after Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot. And I believe the other person, John Hoffman, I think that was the guy's name. And I believe his wife, they were shot and injured in that shooting in Minnesota, the political attack in Minnesota. That's what I said. Didn't feel good to say it. And it sure as heck does not feel good to be right about it. It took 3 months. It took 3 months for me to be right about it, that it was going to happen again. I take no pleasure in that. I sure do not think I'm special for saying that, because who wouldn't say it? Who didn't know it? Who couldn't see it? Who couldn't call it? I'm no genius. I'm no expert on things. Who doesn't see what's going on? Who doesn't see what's going on and realize that we have no leadership to guide us through this time? We had no leadership over the past several years to guide us through this time, because once again, we've lowered the bar down to the basement after there were 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump. One where a man was killed. A man was killed at a political event. And as long as you came out and said thoughts and prayers for the family, good enough. Good enough. Now back to campaigning. Now back to business as usual. Within a matter of days. I played clips. Within a matter of days, we were back to business as usual after Donald Trump was almost killed at a political event and a man was killed. We were back to business as usual in a matter of days. Some people would say in a matter of hours. And if you think that Joe Biden showed leadership then, I would humbly disagree with you on that. I don't think he did. I think he did the bare minimum of what you would expect any president to do. He came out, he made the statement, no place in the country for political violence, didn't blame one side or the other, reached out to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, glad you're okay. Kamala Harris, same thing. Donald Trump, glad you're okay. The bare minimum. The bare minimum. Are we truly going to celebrate people for doing the bare minimum of what you would expect them to do? No. What you have to do in that situation is you have to walk out in front of the country and you have to speak directly to the country and say, we all are going to have to take a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and understand why we are trending in the direction that we are trending. Kind of like the Utah governor did. He did a pretty good job the couple of times I saw him. Kind of like that. Not one side, not the other side. All of us have to take a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves how we got here. Ask ourselves how we're interacting with people that we disagree with. Are we interacting with people we disagree at all, or are we writing them off, cutting them out of our lives? If we are interacting with those people, are we interacting with those people in a way that's helpful? Is it helping the discussion, or is it hurting the discussion? As Barack Obama said, once again, going back to the speech after Gabby Giffords was shot, Barack Obama, and I encourage people to go listen to that speech. It was a fantastic speech. And you can play it in this very moment. You can play that same speech in this very moment. Arizona, Gabby Giffords Memorial, if you want to look it up on YouTube. I played huge excerpts of it on episodes after shootings in the past. It's a great speech. But he said, talk to people in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds. Are we doing that in this country? Are we talking to one another in a way that heals rather than a way that wounds? I've had a little, again, I've had enough of the, you can't talk to those people. You can't talk to those people. I do it all the time. People I know, people I have known that are on the opposite end of the political spectrum. I do it all the time, but I do it with people I don't know. Total strangers. I'm sitting in a waiting room. There's about, 8 to 10 people in the waiting room, and in walks a man with his big red Make America Great Again cap. And who does he sit down next to? He just happens to sit down next to me. Oh, boy. Sits down next to me. And so this was right after the Joe Biden-Donald Trump debate that just happened. Right? I think it was like the day after. Literally the day after. Sits down next to me. 8 to 10 other people in the room. And me and this guy, we start chopping it up. Hey, what'd you think of the debate? Oh, I got to tell you, man, that wasn't good. Oh, yeah. And they go, yeah, they told us Biden was running circles around people. I say, yeah, I know. But that Trump is crazy, right? You know he's crazy, right? Yeah. He can be a little crazy sometimes. We spoke to one another. We didn't have any animosity towards one another because we didn't greet each other with animosity. He asked me a question, I answer it. And I asked him some questions, he answered them. We didn't agree with one another, but we weren't going to throw fists in that waiting room. And I noticed something. About the people in the waiting room. When he came in, they all gave him a dirty look. Everybody, oh boy, look at this guy with that MAGA hat on. They all gave him a dirty look. The more I sat there and talked to the guy, they started giving me dirty looks for talking to the guy. I all of a sudden became MAGA because I talked to the guy. But once again, he didn't approach me with any animosity. So why would I give animosity back to him? I don't know him. All I know about him is he's wearing a hat. That's it. That's all I know. I know he supports Donald Trump. I don't know why. I don't know why he doesn't see Donald Trump the same way others see Donald Trump. I don't know. But to find out, I should probably talk to him. Maybe I'll get some insight as to why. I don't know. I have to try. Because if I don't try, we end up where we are now. If I don't try, we end up exactly where we are now. It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse if we don't try. We cannot listen to the people who tell you, don't try. Don't try. We have to deprogram them. We have to destroy them. They are the enemy. Don't try. We cannot listen to those people. Those people are not helpful. those people are only helpful to themselves. And I've given up trying to figure out whether or not they're doing it on purpose, whether or not they're being the way they are because they want to get clicks and likes and monetize that in some way, or they just see things vastly different than I see it, where I don't know what you gain by cutting off communication with people that you need. We do need these people. We need a united country. I hope people understand that. We need a united country. And if you say to me, okay, comparison guy, I agree with you, but the country cannot unite with Donald Trump as president. He's simply too toxic. The country cannot unite with Donald Trump as president. Well, okay, let's agree with one another on that. I say that to say, if I agree with you that Donald Trump is the problem and we can't unite because he's too toxic, all I would say is, okay, you have to listen to people who can tell you what to do about that. Because Donald Trump is going to go in 3 years. His term will be over. Anyone who thinks, oh, no, he ain't going nowhere, we'll see. We'll see. I'd be very surprised at that. And so, as I say, if I agree with you that Donald Trump is the problem, you have to listen to someone who's giving you the strategy going forward, proactively, not reactively, how to deal with Donald Trump, as I have done in several episodes. And because this ain't a rant podcast, I will do it again. Here is the problem you have to grapple with, Democrats. Donald Trump does not want to fail as a president. Failure would be getting to the midterms, or particularly getting to the end of his second term, and the answer to the question, are you better off now than you were 2 years ago? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? He wants that answer to be a resounding yes. Yes, I'm better off. He doesn't want people to say no. So his policies, set them all aside, whether you agree or whether you disagree, whether you think they're going to be helpful, whether you think they're going to be harmful. Set them aside and focus in on that. Donald Trump wants to be successful. He's going to say he's successful no matter what. We know that. No matter what, he's going to say, I deserve a statue. I deserve to be on Mount Rushmore. Nobody's ever done what I've done. Set that aside. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Waste of time to argue over that, to get upset over that. That's how he is. That's how he talks. But the proof will be in the pudding of how people feel, of how things are going, of the state of the country. Democrats, what do you want the answer to that question to be? Are you better off now than you were 2 years ago? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? What do you want the answer to that question to be? If you say you also want the answer to that question to be yes, you're lying. You're lying. Democrats do not want the answer to that question to be yes, any more than Republicans wanted the answer to that question to be yes when Joe Biden was in office. This is what we've turned into. This is our problem. This is the problem for the Democratic Party. They want to pretend, I shouldn't say pretend, but they want to be all about the country and democracy and preserving our democracy and protecting our democracy. But at the same time, they want Donald Trump to be an abject failure, which is why they oppose everything. Everything. Even some things that, give it a tweak or two, they wouldn't oppose. They would be okay with. I mean, are Democrats seriously arguing in favor of drug cartels now? Donald Trump, he's blowing up drug cartel boats. That's what they're telling us. They're drug cartel boats. You want him to produce the evidence of that? Fine. Ask for the evidence. Ask for the evidence, the proof, why they were determining that those are drug cartel boats. But again, it wasn't Donald Trump up in an airplane, pushing a button, dropping a bomb. It was people, experienced people, I believe, in our military making that call. So you have all these Democrats come out. They should have boarded the boat. That's what they should have done. This isn't right. This is wrong. This is unconstitutional. This is illegal. They should have boarded the boat. How do you board a boat from the air? They're up in the air. They're up in an airplane. They're shooting. You understand? You saw the video, right? They're shooting from up in the air. A missile, a bomb. You can't board. What? So if you say, well, they got to call, a ship. Maybe there's no ships in the area. I don't know. This is why you can't just jump to this. Oh, it's wrong. It's illegal. Maybe there are no ships in the area. These guys are on the run. They're not going to slow down to wait for a Coast Guard ship or a Navy ship to catch up with them. It sounds like you're arguing on behalf of the drug cartels. It doesn't make sense. This is not the way to fight Donald Trump. To fight Donald Trump, you have to listen to people who can tell you where Donald Trump is most vulnerable. Most vulnerable. Where is Donald Trump most vulnerable outside of the people who already hate Donald Trump? Where is he vulnerable to the people who are voting for Donald Trump, have voted for Donald Trump, for his movement, for the Republican Party, for conservatives, because we can assume we're going to get an extension of Donald Trump in the next presidential election. What are the vulnerabilities of Donald Trump's agenda? What is the single greatest threat to Donald Trump's agenda and his movement going forward? We've had an example of it, and you're never going to guess what it is in a million years. The clearest example of the single greatest threat to Donald Trump's agenda was Signalgate. It was Signalgate. Why? Because it was obvious incompetence. It was obvious incompetence. That is the single greatest threat to Donald Trump. Not his bombasticity, whatever, if that's a word. Not his personality. We've seen his personality for 10 years. Not his lies. He's lied for 10 years. Not coming out after a tragedy and saying the wrong thing. He does it all the time. Not the 1,000,001 things that people just keep repeating over and over and over again on the left. No, it's the appearance of incompetence, that you don't know what the heck you're doing. That's the greatest threat to Donald Trump and his movement going forward, to J.D. Vance, to Marco Rubio, to this administration. Not looking like they don't know what the heck they're doing. That's what Signalgate was. There was no excuse for it. It looked incompetent. It exposed Pete Hegseth as out of his league, not knowing what the heck he was doing. When you get a Secretary of Treasury on the news and you force him to admit that he knows what the heck a tariff is and who pays a tariff, he knows that it's just not billions of dollars suddenly flowing into America from overseas countries. No, tariffs are paid by the consumer. They're passed on to the consumer. That's where that money's coming from, the consumer. And so it's incompetence. It's we're doing tariffs. No, we're not doing tariffs. We're doing tariffs on this country. Now we're not doing tariffs on this country. It's incompetence. Saying tariffs are something that they're not. It's incompetence. Vladimir Putin's my buddy. Don't worry. He's going to listen to me. We're going to end this war. Don't worry. And then Vladimir Putin drops more bombs than he's ever dropped. It's incompetence. It's being duped. It's being played for a sucker. That's the greatest threat to Donald Trump by people who are not hardcore MAGA supporters. Let me be clear here about who I'm talking about. Once again, as I said a million times, the people who decide elections. The people who actually decide elections. Not the people who hate Donald Trump. Nothing's going to change their minds. Not the people who adore Donald Trump. Nothing's going to change their minds. It's the people who went out and voted for Donald Trump because, for whatever reason, I'm not going to get into it. I'm prolonging the show. But they went out and they voted for Donald Trump. They don't adore Donald Trump. They don't love Donald Trump, but they had a reason. They were fearful of something that Kamala Harris was going to do. They were fearful of something Joe Biden was going to do. They were fearful of something Democrats were going to do. Maybe they live in an area where they depend on fracking. I don't know. Whatever the reason, they cast their vote for Donald Trump. You want to keep them from casting their vote for J.D. Vance? This is what you have to understand. This is what you have to stay focused on. This is what will change people's minds. Not the nonsense. Not the nonsense that we've been watching for 10 years. If it hasn't changed people's minds now, if they went out and voted for Donald Trump in 2024, knowing exactly who Donald Trump is, what do you think is going to change their mind by keep telling them who Donald Trump is? Don't you think people know by now? No, you have to focus on this looks like incompetence. This looks like the people in his administration are incompetent. They don't know what the heck they're doing, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the country. That's how you have to talk to people. That's how you have to talk to people and say, look, listen, I don't say every single idea Donald Trump has is a bad idea. Sometimes it's the execution of the idea. Sometimes it's the people who are executing the idea. That's the problem. And I'll tell you, yeah, I don't think Joe Biden got everything right. I think he had issues. I think he got a lot of things wrong. Once again, I think he handed Donald Trump an economy that was built on sand. It was not going to last. It was going to tumble at some point. And so I'm not going to ignore that. When you talk to people that way, maybe they'll talk back to you because you're not being so one-sided on everything. They'll go, yeah, I agree. This does look stupid. This does look incompetent. The tariffs, the way they're doing it, they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. That does look stupid. As long as you admit that Donald Trump was kind of handed a little bit of an issue with the economy, that it was inevitable, that at some point, the job creation, month after month after month after month, based a lot on government spending, was not going to last. Somebody was going to get left holding that check. Everybody was going to run out of the restaurant and somebody was going to be left holding that check, holding that problem. And so once again, I can argue Donald Trump isn't handling it well, isn't making good decisions, but I don't have to ignore that Joe Biden didn't run the best economy and wasn't the most responsible spender that we've ever had in the White House. After you accept that, go where he's vulnerable, the incompetence. You got to go where you got to go. Once again, how many times do I have to say it? This idea that Democrats are not going to go to and do certain media, they're not going to go and sit down on Fox News. This idea that Democrats are only going to go and do the podcast of the people where the audience skews 90% left or 90% right. I mean, what good do you think you're doing? What good do you think you're doing going and talking to the people that you know already agree with you? When you go, you have to respectfully say, look, I know we don't agree with things here, but what we're seeing in this administration, a lot of it, we wouldn't accept it from any other administration. We cannot set that precedent. We cannot have President Donald Trump set a precedent that we know we would not be okay with for any other president. We just can't. We have to have a level of agreement over what the constitutional powers of a president are. And we have to have people who are competent and able to lead these agencies. And if RFK is not competent and able to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, he needs to go. And we need the support of the people to impress that upon their elected leaders, that he needs to go. That's all. Respectful discussion. Some things they'll agree with, some things they won't. But you got to go there because you have no idea what they agree with and what they won't agree with. You assume. People assume they know what people are going to agree with and what they won't, but you don't know because you don't try. You don't talk to them. I don't mean you. I got to get out of the habit of saying that. You, as if I'm talking to my audience specifically. Of course, my audience, my very small audience gets it. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking in general in the country. How the heck do you know what somebody's going to agree with or disagree with if you don't talk to them? And after you do that, you figure out where Donald Trump is vulnerable, where the Republican Party is vulnerable, if assuming you're a Democrat. You go where you need to go to take your case to those people. Then you have to know what winning looks like. You have to know what winning looks like. Winning, as I said, once again, I apologize, I'm repeating myself, but winning does not look like all of these Trump supporters falling down on their knees and begging forgiveness for ever supporting Donald Trump. I thought it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, and sad at the same time, the articles I would see right after the election that supposedly there were all these Trump supporters who were suddenly regretting voting for Donald Trump. I said, really? Really? Maybe they went out and they found one or two legitimate people who were like, man, I wish I hadn't voted for him now. But they weren't Trump supporters. We know that. They weren't hardcore Trump supporters. No hardcore Trump supporter, once again, after 10 years, after probably voting for him 3 times, in a month is going to go, oh, man, I just figured out he's not a good president. It's very unlikely that's going to happen. So winning looks like moving past Donald Trump and the movement and this philosophy. That's all. That's it. Winning is the end game. It's the final score. That's it. That's your objective. You don't need people to apologize. You don't need people to admit that they're wrong. You don't need people to beg forgiveness. No, you want to move past this moment in our country's history to a more civil society, to a more reasoned and well thought out society, and better leaders who follow the Constitution the way the Constitution was expected to be followed. Still with disagreements, still with arguments, still with heated discussions and heated debates, but not what we have now. We want to move past this. That's all. That's winning. We want to move past this moment. We want to restore the country back to what the country was when we were all proud of the country and we felt good about the direction the country was going in. That's what we want. That's winning. Winning is not deprogramming the other side. Winning is not destroying the other side. Winning is not gloating because the other side collapsed in abject failure. That's not winning, because that is no good for the country. And that's it. Finally, just a couple of just random thoughts I had to wrap this up in terms of ideas, suggestions, solutions. I mean, again, once again, we know a lot of the problem exists with the interactions that people have online. So for people who put these shows out, whether it be podcasting shows, YouTube channels, or whatever it is it time to revisit some sort of a fairness doctrine, some sort of an updating of the fairness doctrine? If you're going to put out a particular point of view, the fairness doctrine says you have to offer the other point of view to go alongside it. I'm going to just read to you now to speed this up. The fairness doctrine was a communications policy that required broadcast licensees to present controversial issues of public importance in a way that included contrasting viewpoints. It was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1969, reinforcing the idea that the public's right to diverse information on important issues was paramount. In the 80s, the FCC under Reagan administration began to argue that the doctrine was a violation of broadcasters' free speech rights and had a chilling effect on discussion of controversial issues, causing stations to avoid them altogether. Many analysts linked the doctrine's appeal to the subsequent rise of partisan talk radio and cable news, which accelerated political polarization in the United States. Calls for reinstatement. Some lawmakers and commentators have periodically called for revival of the fairness doctrine, citing rising media bias and public trust of the media. Opponents of reinstatement argue that would involve the government in judging editorial decisions, which could lead to censorship. Cable news, they generally will present, they'll have somebody on to argue. They'll argue. They don't mind arguing on cable news, on TV. Podcasting, on the other hand, that's a problem. That's where we need some sort of a revival, if you ask me, of some type of fairness doctrine. I'm not saying the exact fairness doctrine that we had to pass, but the podcasting space is the wild, wild west right now. Anything goes. You can say anything you want. Anything, literally. I told you, Dan Bongino, I miss him. I miss listening to him because he was a nut. He was crazy. He'd say anything. He'd come on there and he'd say, Joe Biden would shower with his teenage daughter. He would take showers with his teenage daughter. She wrote about it in her diary. We got a hold of her diary and we're going to be exposing it. Joe Biden used to take showers with his teenage daughter. Now, you would think, can't you get sued for saying something like that? Nope. Not on podcasting. Not if you're talking about a public figure. Nope. Anything goes. Now, that's just, kind of silly. Just entertaining for people with a warped mind like mine. I just laugh at it. But when you're talking about ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine in the middle of a pandemic, when you're talking about whether or not wearing a mask in a grocery store violates your constitutional rights in some form or fashion, when you're arguing things like that in the middle of a pandemic, yeah, I think you need to have some sort of a fairness doctrine in podcasting. After an election, when one side or the other loses, and you have people coming on claiming there are buckets and buckets and buckets of evidence that the election was stolen, and you have people storming the Capitol as a result of that information, yeah, I think you need some form of the fairness doctrine in podcasting. I do. I just do. It seems like a no-brainer. We cannot continue to allow podcasting to grow out of control in the way that it is without some sort of regulation. And I know people hate that word. A lot of people hate that word, regulation. But it can't be the wild, wild west where people can just say anything they want with no pushback whatsoever in terms of what young people are seeing and hearing and listening to, because it's not just podcasting. Once again, I mean, the responsibility has got to go back to the parents. If these young people are at home, if they're away at college, obviously it's a little tougher. But in a lot of cases, a lot of people, they live at home. They're at home. Their parents just don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're listening to. They don't know who their friends are anymore. I mean, so some of this, we can't take the responsibility completely out of the hands of the people closest to these individuals and put the blame on some influencer that they've never met a million miles away, or some tech company that we can't just put all the blame there and say, oh, you have to make your platform safer in some sort of way. How the heck do you do that? How do you do that? It starts with the individual. Unless we want to start putting age limits on this stuff. I mean, I do think it's kind of crazy that if someone goes on CNN and drops the F-bomb, sirens start going off and people start flipping out, papers start flying up in the air, because somebody said the F word on CNN. But we have nothing, essentially, to regulate what someone is saying on a podcast or some gaming app or YouTube or the internet. There's essentially no regulation there. That seems weird to me. That seems like that's something that we have to fix. You got to jump through 97 hoops of authentication to pay your doggone electric bill. You almost need a blood sample to go online and pay your electric bill. But any random child can get online and see and hear anything they want. It seems like we need to do something about that. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. We got to put a lid on the cap. Put a lid on the condescending, arrogance, and patronizing of our fellow Americans. Going back once again to Barack Obama's speech after the Gabby Gifford shooting. Quoting him, he said, "We cannot stop every act of violence in the world, but how we treat each other is entirely up to us." How we treat each other is entirely up to us. It's not up to any social media app. It's not up to any algorithm. It's not up to any tech billionaire. It's not up to any politician. It's not up to any podcast host. How we treat each other is entirely up to us. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.